วัสดีครับสวัสดีครับทุกท่านสวัสดีครับสวัสดีครับ สวัสดีปีใหม่ทุกท่านนะครับก็ปีใหม่นี้ขอให้ทุกท่านมีสุขภาพที่ดีนะครับแล้วก็ขอให้ท่านปรารถนาอะไรขอให้ได้ดังนั้นนะครับขอให้มีความสุขนะครับที่สำคัญเนี่ยขอให้มีความสุขนะครับที่สำคัญที่สุดนะครับให้ value และให้คุณค่าต่อตัวเองนะครับอันนี้สำคัญนะครับถ้าเราให้คุณค่าของตัวเองเนี่ยเรารู้สึกดีขึ้นกับตัวเองเนี่ยเราสามารถทำอะไรก็ได้นะครับ So today I want to talk in the English language a little bit and we're going to do some endocrine regulation. And before that, just want to wish everybody Happy New Year. And I hope I wish you good health and I wish you prosperity. Anything you wish for, I wish you. I hope you accomplish it. And the most important thing is joy. That's the most important thing. Happiness and joy is the most important thing. And don't forget to give yourself value. That's the important thing. You have to value yourself. Once you value yourself, that's going to help you, your confidence. It's going to help everything so much. So don't forget to value yourself. All right. So today we're going to do some endocrinology, and I have like a little short presentation a bit of this. I have some students ask me about endocrine regulation and hormone regulation. I think just before New Year's. So I just want to go over it real quick, and yeah, so endocrine glands and endocrine hormones, and of course endocrine glands are the glands that secrete hormones right into the bloodstream directly, right? And the hormone from the endocrine glands will cause your body to have some kind of physiological response. And so, for example, a thyroid gland, right? Thyroid gland will release thyroid hormone into your bloodstream. And that's going to regulate what? That's going to regulate your metabolism, right? So too much thyroid hormone in your bloodstream, what would happen? So that's too much metabolism, so you can be very thin. Everything's going to speed up in your body. You can have diarrhea, and you maybe you're a trimmer, and you can lose a lot of weight. So that's a lot of thyroid hormone in your bloodstream, right? And how about too little thyroid hormone in your bloodstream? It's going to be the opposite. You can increase weight, you can gain weight. Everything's going to be so slow for you. And you're gonna feel like you heated. You can feel like your body's hot all the time because there's not enough metabolism going on in your body, right? So that's an example of endocrine hormone. So thyroid is one of them, right? And let me orient you in my not so nice diagram, right? Okay, so this is the hypothalamus, and one level down is your pituitary. So I wrote out the anterior pituitary glands right here, and from the anterior pituitary down, you have the endocrine glands, like the peripheral glands, your thyroid gland, your adrenal gland, your ovaries, your testes, all these endocrine glands throughout your body. That's gonna release individual endocrine hormone into your bloodstream that will cause physiological response in your body, right? And then, of course, when the glands release the hormones will act on your organ, your tissue, your muscle, your blood vessel to cause some kind of physiological response. And so how do we regulate these hormones released throughout your body, right? So there's a couple ways. One way is the neural regulation and stuff like that, but that's not very common. So the most common regulation of hormone is the feedback, right? And that's positive feedback, and that's also negative feedback. Negative feedback is a big one. So basically, your endocrine gland will release some kind of hormone out, right? And once your bloodstream detects the hormones in your bloodstream, a lot of hormones, that hormone's gonna like tell the master switch to switch off. You know, you don't have to release the hormone anymore because that's all hormones, you know, producing enough in the body. So that's negative feedback. And positive feedback, you see a few cases of that. But we'll get to that in a second. But positive feedback basically is that your endocrine gland release the hormones, but instead of like turning off the hormone, the hormones telling the gland to release more hormones. Okay, so so here's the hypothalamus, here's the pituitary, and here's the peripheral endocrine glands, right? And basically the anterior pituitary will send out hormones that needs to trigger the endocrine glands to release individual hormones. And so, as I said, you know, these glands, the adrenal gland, the thyroid gland, the ovaries, the testes, these glands, when they release the hormones into the blood, they need to trigger, they need something to tell them that, hey, release your hormones. And that's the job of the hormones of the anterior pituitary. The anterior pituitary will release hormones that would trigger or stimulate the endocrine gland to release the individual hormones that will cause us to have a physiological response, right? So from the anterior pituitary, you have hormones that would trigger your endocrine glands to release hormones. So for example, anterior pituitary hormone, one of them is ACTH. So ACTH will trigger the adrenal gland to release cortisol. So adrenal gland is a little gland on top of your kidneys. That's your adrenal gland, and basically the adrenal gland is going to release cortisol, which is like corticosteroid, your natural steroid. And I'll give you an example of this. Has anybody ever had like chronic inflammation before? Like chronic inflammation that you need to take corticosteroid to reduce your inflammation, right? So so the steroid reduces the inflammation in your body. That's very important. But if you take synthetic, if you take pills, you take cortisol pill, you know, corticosteroid pills, right? You have to, when your doctor takes to get off the medication, you have to taper that down, right? You have to take like, you know, half a tablet a day, quarter tablet a day, and then eventually you'll be off your corticosteroid pills. So basically what happens is when you're taking synthetic corticosteroid, when you're taking like the steroid your doctor gives you, right? Your body sense that there's so much steroid in the bloodstream that your adrenal gland stops working. Your adrenal gland doesn't send out like cortisol anymore. Your adrenal gland doesn't produce natural corticosteroid anymore. So this is why if you're taking corticosteroid that your doctor gives you long-termly, you have to taper that down. And when you reduce your medication of steroid down, your adrenal will start to produce natural corticosteroid once again. And that's very important. If you suddenly stop your corticosteroid, your adrenal gland's not going to like produce enough steroid, and that's going to cause you to be moody, your blood pressure's going to be fluctuating and everything like that. So that's important. Okay, so that's ACTH coming from your anterior pituitary, and the ACTH will stimulate your adrenal gland to release cortisol, right? And same with hormones LH and FSH from your anterior pituitary. FH and LH will come out from your anterior pituitary into your bloodstream and stimulate your ovary or testes to produce either testosterone or to produce your estrogen, right? So you can see there's a relationship between anterior pituitary and your adrenal gland by itself, right? ACTH stimulate adrenal, FSH, LH stimulate your ovaries or testes. Thyroid stimulating hormone, what's that going to stimulate? Thyroid stimulating hormone is going to stimulate your thyroid gland to release thyroxine or your thyroid hormones, right? And of course, prolactin is going to stimulate your breast to produce milk. So that's the relationship between anterior pituitary and the endocrine glands, right? The anterior pituitary will produce hormones that will stimulate individual endocrine gland to release certain hormones that will cause your body to produce physiological response. Okay, so I'll give you an example of how your anterior pituitary endocrine gland works, and when your endocrine glands release a lot of hormones, that's going to cause a negative feedback. Okay, so anterior pituitary release thyroid stimulating hormone into your bloodstream. So now thyroid stimulating hormone from your anterior pituitary from your brain goes into your bloodstream, goes to your thyroid gland, to stimulate your thyroid gland to release thyroxines. And thyroxines, like thyroid hormone. So that's going to cause your body to upregulate your metabolism. Your metabolism will go up and everything like that. And once your bloodstream is full with thyroxine or thyroid hormone, that thyroid hormone is going to go back to your anterior pituitary or to your hypothalamus and say, hey, pituitary, we have a lot of thyroid hormone now, so tell the thyroid stimulating hormone to stop. So tell the pituitary to stop producing thyroid stimulating hormone. And once the anterior pituitary stop producing thyroid stimulating hormone, nothing's going to stimulate thyroid gland to produce the hormone anymore. So now the body returns to homeostasis. That's how your body maintains homeostasis, through negative feedback. So basically, negative feedback is when your thyroid glands producing so much of the hormone, right? And then from the endocrine hormone, your that's gonna go back to your either hypothalamus or the anterior pituitary and say, hey, no more stimulation. You don't need to stimulate the thyroid. You don't need to stimulate the endocrine gland anymore, because we have a lot of hormones already. We have a lot of hormones that's producing a lot of physiological response. So that's negative feedback. And there's two types of negative feedback. There's a long loop feedback. Long loop feedback is like, your anterior pituitary hormone will produce like a stimulating hormone, right? Something will stimulate the endocrine glands. And once the endocrine gland produces the individual hormones, either cortisol, thyroid hormone, testosterone, or estrogen, then that hormone is going to go back to the hypothalamus or the anterior pituitary and say, hey, stop, we have enough hormone, you don't need to stimulate the glands anymore. So that's the long loop feedback. The short loop feedback comes from the anterior pituitary. So the anterior pituitary will produce, the stimulating hormone, either ACTH, FSH, LH, prolactin or thyroid stimulating hormone. And once the stimulating hormone comes out, that's going to cause feedback, negative feedback. So it's going to tell the hypothalamus to stop stimulating your anterior pituitary to produce the stimulating hormones, right? So it's very simple, very, very simple. And that's the main way of regulating hormones secretion is through negative feedback. That's negative feedback. So now what is positive feedback? Positive feedback is when it's quite rare, you don't see it that often, but basically positive feedback is that your endocrine gland is producing endocrine hormone. And instead of telling the gland to stop producing the hormone is telling the glands to produce more and more and more hormones. So let's say, I'll give you an example. In menstrual cycle, what happens every month when a woman has a menstrual period? She bleeds, right? And when she bleeds, what happens? That's when you ovulate, when the eggs, when the egg comes out with the blood, right? That's ovulation. So in ovulation, there's a few phases, right? One of the phases of ovulation is follicular phase. In follicular phase of menstrual cycle, right? What happens? Your FSH and LH comes out from your anterior pituitary, and FSH and LH will tell the ovaries to produce what hormone? To produce estrogen, right? So normally in negative feedback, once the gland produces like a hormone, like once a gland produces a hormone, that hormone will tell the gland to stop producing the hormone, right? But in positive feedback, once the ovary produce estrogen, the estrogen will go back to the anterior pituitary and tell the anterior pituitary to produce more, to send out FSH and LH more and more and more. And then what happens? LH surge, right? That's LH surge. So LH surge will cause the follicles to rupture, and then the egg will be released. So that's ovulation. So ovulation is positive feedback. Ovulation is when the ovaries produce estrogen, and estrogen will go back and tell the anterior pituitary to produce more FSH, to release more LH, more and more and more of that will cause ovulation, will cause follicular rupture, right? So that's just very basic. And yeah, so I just want to talk about the negative feedback today in hormone regulation, especially the regulation of endocrine hormone. And it's very, very simple. And again, just to recap, hypothalamus, pituitary, and then the peripheral endocrine gland, whether it be adrenal gland, thyroid gland, ovaries, testes. So basically, these glands need stimulation from the anterior pituitary hormone. The anterior pituitary in your brain will send out a hormone that will stimulate these glands to release the hormone that will cause physiological response. And once the gland produces those hormones that will cause physiological response, those hormones will go back and tell the anterior pituitary to stop stimulating the gland now, because you don't need the hormones anymore. And again, that's very simple. And I hope I've answered some of the students' questions that's asked me how regulation works. And I guess my voice is giving out today. I guess too much celebrating for New Year's maybe. But so wish you guys good luck, and then Happy New Year's again. As I said, I wish you happiness and joy, and most importantly, you have to look after yourself and look after your family and look after your friends, look after your neighbors basically. And as I said, give yourself some value, don't forget to do that. You know, only you, your opinion matters most, right? So you tell yourself that you're a valuable person. Give yourself some confidence. You know, you will accomplish most of your goals. Okay, that's it. สวัสดีครับ